Alrighty, welcome back everyone. So today I want to focus on hype in Dragon Ball, a bit of a sore subject I feel like for a lot of people. However, if you guys have been a part of the Legends community or the Dokkan community for like the past 24 hours, you will know it's been a hot topic all because of Dragon Ball Legends, who kickstarted this whole kind of debate. So shout out to Legends for, inadvertently causing another kind of fandom debate, if you will. But basically, if you guys have been following Legends, yesterday they put out their part 2 stream for the 7th anniversary, which they're celebrating their 7th anniversary right now. Yesterday, they had the stream to reveal who the part 2 anniversary headliners are going to be. Now, I've made my own separate vid on that, so if you guys want to check that out, you can, of course. But, we already know the part 2 anniversary headliners are solely focused on the Saiyan Saga, with the two big boys being Saiyan Saga Goku and Saiyan Saga Vegeta. Now, on paper, this should be perfectly fine. I mean, obviously, Goku and Vegeta, I think we can all agree it's an iconic rivalry. Their first battle has so many iconic and hype moments and stuff. However, when you look at what the overall community had to say about this, there was a lot of back and forth in terms of if Saiyan Saga is a worthy choice for being in the 7th anniversary as a main kind of headlining focus. And some people were happy with it, but other people were not. Some people were saying this is not hype enough to be a part of it. There were just all sorts of different kind of conversations. So today, we're gonna go ahead and see what the overall community has to say about, the conversation of hype versus Dragon Ball and all that sort of stuff and gacha games. I'll chime in, share my thoughts on the whole kind of situation. But it is going to be a very conversation heavy vid today, so hopefully you guys will enjoy the vid nonetheless. If you do, show your support. Drop a like down below and subscribe to the channel, please. Also, comment down below your thoughts. Let us know, what is your personal stance? What is your personal take when it comes to hype related to Dragon Ball, when it comes to Dragon Ball games and gacha games like Dokkan or Legends? Let us know in the comments down below. But with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Now, the first person I want to go ahead and bring up here is Rody. So shout out to Rody, of course. Shout out to all these people. They're all fantastic people at the end of the day. I still love them all very much. But of course, with Rody, I feel like he was the one who really kind of kick-started this conversation on a grander scale, at least for me on Twitter, probably for a lot of other people as well. But basically, yesterday, he was reacting to the part 2 stream reveals in real time. And before I go any further, let me just clarify, some of this stuff may get taken out of context. I will try to add context to be fair, but of course, I may miss some things, so that's on me. But with Rody here, he was basically saying Saiyan Saga Goku and Vegeta are not hype enough to make up for part 1 of the 7th anniversary. Basically, the 6th anniversary part 2 was much better in terms of character choices. Vegeta's not even a great ape, and later, right after that, he even said he's going to be saving his Chrono Crystals for part 3. Now, this post, got some notice, but really, this one blew up. You see the views, you see all the responses. There were people who were agreeing with Rody, and there were others who were saying that Rody was completely out of left field. He was losing his mind. Like, it was just so many different kind of opinions and beliefs on what Rody was saying right here. Now, let me just say this to kind of provide some information. So obviously, the 6th anniversary part 2 last year, for those who don't remember what it was, the part 2 characters were Super Saiyan God Goku and Ultimate Gohan. So those were the two characters, Super Saiyan God Goku from his fight versus Beerus, and then Ultimate Gohan from his fight versus Super Buu. Now, during that time, there was a pretty decent amount of backlash, I feel like, if I remember correctly, especially in terms of Gohan being an anniversary character, Ultimate Gohan. There was backlash on that choice. So for Rody to say that Saiyan Saga Goku and Vegeta, are not good enough, or worse character choices compared to 6th anniversary, that is definitely the hot take for me above all else, especially the not hype thing, but this is more so that of a bit of a hot take for me. But obviously this was his kind of opinion, was that, the two Saiyan Saga characters, the Saiyan Saga focus is not hype enough to make up for what part 1 has been. Going later into the day, he even said, Saiyan Saga, it's an iconic experience, it's an iconic arc, of course, a better part of the series, but still not hype, especially once you're comparing it to fusions, to the flashy forms like Super Saiyan and whatnot, and other big things like that, then it just doesn't hit. So this was kind of the take, this was kind of the stance that Rody was kind of taking. It's funny too, because he says right here that, Rody, I will say right now, because I was following the conversation, Rody was definitely getting pressed by a lot of people, including Vector right here, who we'll talk about in just a sec, but Rody was getting pressed by a lot of people for being against the Saiyan Saga as a anniversary option, as an anniversary, celebration choice. And even he said right here, he's been supporting, wanting, Kid Goku versus Demon King Piccolo since the 10th anniversary for Dokkan. I do remember him saying this, so I do agree with him, he's been, supporting this, so, let's give him some props. But yeah, he's definitely been against the Saiyan Saga, so he was definitely getting pressed a good amount. And you can see right here, he was still kind of getting pressed by all sorts of like different people about like, you know, Saiyan Saga being or not being an option and stuff. It was just all sorts of like kind of different back and forth on that. Now, Rhodey got the ball rolling, but then Vector came in. For me, Vector has been like the person I've been seeing probably the most, or like the second amount of most, probably, followed by Truth. Like it's those two I feel like who were like really kind of kept the conversation going. But Vector, of course, you know, like I said earlier, you know, he was kind of one of the people pressing Rhodey on the take. And like, you know, if you go down here, you can see he's been like reposting, doing all sorts of posts, basically supporting the Saiyan Saga, supporting the choice of the Saiyan Saga for the part 2 of the anniversary and stuff. Obviously, this is like a pretty funny post right here, was just the whole Rhodey, like, is it not, they're not hype enough? And then you got Platty right here talking about, can we accept it's hype yet? So it was literally just that. You can even see other people like going like based versus, you know, like it's that sort of stuff. It is that sort of conversation, you know, like other people are here outside bias. Goku versus Vegeta is only behind Namek in terms of hype, you know, is a big part of the build up and stuff. And Legends players don't deserve these units. That, yeah, like, it's just all sorts of stuff. Even Vector said this is also Dokkan players stuff. There's just a lot of different takes. A lot of people were very upset about this sort of perspective, which not just Rhodey, but other prominent people kind of felt the same way. They echoed the same thing, which is that Saiyan Saga is not good enough. Now, me personally, before I go any further, let me just kind of say right here, as far as I'm concerned, I do believe that Saiyan Saga is hype enough for a celebration. It's hype enough for the 7th anniversary. Now, some people may not agree with that. Some people will say, hey, you know, instead of Saiyan Saga, why don't we get Namek? Or why don't we get Cell Saga? Or some other things like that. At the end of the day, you know, there's all different preferences. If you guys know me, you know, I'm a huge Namek fan. So I would love to get Namek all the time. But at the same time, you know, just because I love Namek more than I love Buu Saga or Cell Saga or all this sort of stuff, that doesn't mean the other moments are not hype enough, if that makes sense. Like, for me, to give a bit of transparency, I like discovered Dragon Ball when I was like 12 or something. I refused to properly watch the Saiyan Saga for years because I just wasn't interested in Yamcha and Tien and those characters that much. I was really just kind of stuck in the Saiyans, you know, I was stuck with the Saiyans. I was really focused with Goku and everything. So eventually I came around, I kind of matured, if you will, so I came around to it. It's been a great time. It's been a great experience. And obviously, you know, we all know Saiyan Saga, there are some pretty hype moments when you think about it. So of course, you know, all these arcs, especially the climactic battles like Goku versus Vegeta in the Saiyan Saga, they're hype enough to qualify, in my opinion. But that's just my kind of personal perspective. Now, that being said, you know, there's different, you know, preferences and stuff. At the end of the day, if a gacha game like Legends or Dokkan makes it so these moments are good enough, like they make it where the hype moments are good and they're done right, then they can do anything. They can make OG Dragon Ball work if they do it right, if they set it up right. They can make OG Dragon Ball work. They can make Dragon Ball Super, GT, Daima. They can make it all work. So, you know, that's just my kind of like feeling on the whole kind of situation. You know, something is not worth for Annie, you know, is like cooked and everything. It's just, yeah, there's all these different kind of conversations. Obviously, you got other people talking about how people should not be saying things are not anniversary worthy because, like, especially like iconic moments like, you know, Goku versus Vegeta, it's like, it's nasty. It is nasty how bad this conversation has gotten. And, you know, to be fair, it is a bit of a dumb conversation in a specific point, which is, at the end of the day, the development teams for Legends and Dokkan do not really care about our opinions, provided we still give them money and still pay and summon for their stuff. So as long as they're still cooking, nothing's going to matter at the end of the day. But this is still a conversation that really kind of got a lot of people going. So, you know, it's been fun stuff. I remember getting into a lot of conversations with Vector. I was pretty much on Vector's side, I feel like, for a lot of like the conversation, because I mean, yeah, you got moments like this. And the problem with the hype conversation, I will say right now, the problem with the hype conversation, especially in terms of like this recent conversation yesterday and everything, was it started with Dragon Ball Legends and then it expanded. And then now you have things like this right here where people are saying Saiyan Saga is not hype. And this is a general kind of, is Saiyan Saga in general hype versus not hype? Now, this is where I think the problem with the hype conversation came through, is it basically broadened the conversation beyond the point of necessity, beyond like the focus that it should have stayed within the scope of. It's like basically like kind of, it just got too big of a conversation, because now we're not just talking about, you know, Legends. Now we're talking about like the Dragon Ball story. And of course, anyone in their right mind would not go against the Saiyan Saga when it comes to the Dragon Ball story. But, you know, when it comes to the gacha games, there are different kind of approaches to it, a lot of different things to consider. Obviously, when it comes to a gacha game, first and foremost, it is about summoning. It's about, getting players to spend money. So it's about a business first and foremost in that sense. But it's all sorts of different stuff like that. I mean, obviously, this is like the post right here that Vector was saying, because he was like kind of like contradicting himself, I guess. So like there's a bit of a back and forth kind of right there. But yeah, it's funny. It really is funny how this whole kind of thing just kind of went crazy here, like between the hype, non-hype stuff, all this sort of stuff, like going against like the new fan. It was just really crazy. The next like kind of thing I do want to bring up though is Truth. So Truth, I gotta give Truth his own kind of point right here. Everyone knows, Truth, of course. Truth, he knows he's got so much motion right here. But I mean, look, so Truth basically earlier he was saying how for global Dokkan campaign, he's focused on Dokkan more so than Legends, of course, understandably so. But he was saying for the global Dokkan campaign, which is going to be the next big celebration, he doesn't want anything before Namek Super Saiyan Goku. Representation is fine, but the casuals don't care about the pre-Super Saiyan characters. Now, he made a vid later kind of talking about all this sort of stuff, and I believe he did kind of clarify, because this could be like looked at as a negative kind of focus. But yeah, he was basically saying Super Saiyans and everything beyond that is what the general populace is going to gravitate towards, as opposed to Saiyan Saga, OG Dragon Ball, any sort of base form kind of moments. So that was kind of like his kind of opinion right there, especially saying right here, it cannot be Saiyan Saga. Now, this was pretty funny because some people were like kind of like, dogging on him for being a fan of Saiyan Saga back during the 7th anniversary for Dokkan, where during the 7th anniversary for Dokkan, if we go into the Saiyan Saga, people will remember, we had these two for our part 2 of the 7th anniversary, and Truth, like many other people, we were all very hyped to see this. We were all so excited to see these two come to the anniversary. Now, were they good? By no means. They were pretty bad. However, they were still pretty hype. So the excitement was there. They were just disappointing compared to the excitement. But Truth, obviously, he was not feeling the same way this type around. He even made a vid saying how this has no hype. So this was where it really got out of hand, I feel like, for a lot of people. Obviously, you can see how much blow up this specifically got, and obviously this is only on Twitter. On YouTube, you can imagine there was a lot more like blow up and everything. It was a lot of back and forth in this whole conversation. Now, Truth's take on this, from what I understood from Truth's kind of perspective, and I'll try to like summarize it as best I can. Basically, Truth was saying that Saiyan Saga, it's iconic, it's well and good, all well and good. Truth loves Saiyan Saga, personally, I imagine. But when it comes to the gacha game perspective, when it comes to the business standpoint, it isn't good enough, especially right now. And for those who remember, when we look at like the recent events of Dokkan 2025, you had the 10th anniversary. From there, you had Daima Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta. You had the beginning episode 1 OG Dragon Ball Kid Goku. Then you had like Cell, you had Pikkon, you had the Golden Week characters with Kaioken Goku and Hid, and Caulifla and Kale and stuff, and you had those characters. You got Mercenary Tao and you got Tien. The character choice overall has been kind of interesting, to say the least, right? And the biggest problem with Dokkan so far this year has been that they take the very hype characters, generally speaking, like Kaioken Goku and Super Saiyan 3 Daima Vegeta, who we never had a Daima Vegeta before in game, and they fumbled them. They made them terrible. But they take characters like Mercenary Tao, Tien, characters like OG Dragon Ball Kid Goku, and they made them so good. They made them insane. Pikkon is so good. So that is a major problem that Dokkan has been having this year, is they just can't seem to combine hype characters with hype and very powerful kits. And obviously, as Truth is saying, given the whole sequence of the year for Dokkan, the wisest course of action for them is to not go with something like Saiyan Saga compared to Super Saiyans with Namek or Daima. Daima and Namek have been the two popular kind of themes for potential global Dokkan campaign. And, me personally, I'm hoping for Daima, or not Daima, but I'm hoping for Namek. I think Daima is going to be the option, but I'm hoping for Namek. But, I mean, like, this was like the point I feel like Truth was really trying to make, is that, Saiyan Saga's fine, it's all cool and everything, but when it comes to the business standpoint, when it comes to the money-making standpoint, you have to think about which arcs, which moments are going to generate the finances, which are going to generate more revenue and profit for the development team. And obviously, I mean, I do have to agree with Truth. I think Saiyan Saga is hype, but when it comes to a money-making standpoint, when it comes to a selling standpoint, a business standpoint, I do have to agree with Truth. I don't think that Saiyan Saga is going to get as much income as maybe Namek or, Daima, especially those two, because people have been wanting a great sequence of Namek units, myself included. Other people have been waiting for Daima Super Saiyan 4 Goku and those characters to come into the game, so obviously there's some other context to be provided. But given the timing of everything, that's basically Truth's whole perspective, is that, the timing of it just does not work for Saiyan Saga in the grand scheme of things. And I do kind of agree with what he's saying. Also, Minato right here. So shout out to Minato. He was kind of saying this point. I feel like this is the main thing I kind of wanted to point out here. He was kind of saying, and I actually forgot about this until he mentioned this, Dragon Ball Super started airing 10 years ago, which is really crazy to think about how time has flown. But, 10 years ago it started, and now the kids who have, the people who've grown up watching Dragon Ball Super weekly, following along with that story and everything, they are the new generation. They're the new people coming into the game, of course, who are in love with Vegito Blue and, Super Saiyan Blue Gogeta and stuff, and Ultra Instinct and, Golden Frieza, Rose right here, of course. So they're going to be the ones who are now really focused on the social media kind of stuff and like the general kind of community, like focused on Dragon Ball Super and that sort of stuff, which is why these gacha games focus on those sorts of things with Dragon Ball Super. I think a great example of that is with Legends, especially, not kind of Dokkan, but more so with Legends, who love to do Tournament of Power, Future Saga. Legends is like, I feel like so known for that, is like, Dragon Ball Super, Future, and then also Tournament of Power. So I mean, those things are all important things that we have to consider. We have to pay attention to that. And also right here, Miyato even kind of said right here, Saiyan Saga does deserve a dual Dokkan Fest, but given the timing of things, it is important that we focus on a really crazy, generally hype kind of reveal. Saiyan Saga can be hype, and for my money's worth, I think if the development team focuses on it, then they can make Saiyan Saga really good. But at the same time, from a general hype perspective, other things are going to generate that natural hype probably a lot easier than Saiyan Saga in terms of the amount of work you have to put in to get the return. So that's been what my take is on it. That's been what Minato seems to say about it, what Truth seems to say about it, all that sort of stuff. But this is what I will say about the hype kind of conversation, because, when we look at the general kind of topic of hype, there's been so much different kind of opinions on Saiyan Saga being peak Dragon Ball, all sorts of different things. People are not happy about the anti-Saiyan Saga fan and everything. I don't want to watch that too long because I know what that clip's going to be. But, the way I kind of feel about this whole situation is we need to go away from the conversation of hype when it comes to gacha games, because I think that has set up so much problems in terms of the past day or so, where people are just saying, hey, this is not hype enough for this, but then someone takes it out of context and says, hey, therefore it's not hype in general is what you're saying. So there's just a lot of back and forth. It is really dumb in the end of the day in terms of the conversation, but it is still the predominant conversation nonetheless. So it is tough, but yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting kind of back and forth. I certainly have been enjoying being a part of it. I've definitely gotten a lot of traction, I feel like, on Twitter because of it. But, at the same time, yeah, right here, this is I think the perfect kind of way for me to kind of end off this kind of vid, because I feel like we're in a point where we can start wrapping this up. But, shout out to Jaren right here. So I think hype, and what he was saying is he thinks hype and unhype are the wrong ways to describe Saiyan Saga, OG Dragon Ball, and all these other things really in Dokkan and Legends, specifically in terms of gachas. Hype is purely subjective. Tao or Saiyan Saga is hyped for a ton of people, but they aren't going to be making a ton of money. Moneymaker is a better and more objective thing to say. Matter of fact, let me repost this because I actually didn't see this until now. But this is, I think, the proper way to describe this, where the conversation of hype and unhype, it is subjective, absolutely. For me, Namek is hype, but for you, maybe for the viewer out there, like you guys, maybe you like Saiyan Saga more, maybe you like the Father-Son Kamehameha more, maybe you like Gogeta, whatever the case may be. The hype is personal. We all have hype for different things because maybe certain things got us into Dragon Ball more, right? So, the hype is subjective, but when it comes to Saiyan Saga, when it comes to all these other conversations, hype should not be the term that is used to kind of throw them into the mix. Now, when it comes to hype, I will say right now, I think everything should start off at an equal base level of hype, and then we should build off that, glass half full, kind of positive kind of look at it. For me, I try to have as much equal hype for everything, I feel like, and then I add more layers of hype to other things that I like more. But for me, I think, you could take OG Dragon Ball, you could take GT Daima, you could take Saiyan Saga, Namek, you could take, all these sorts of things, and you could make it work. You can make it work because there are people who are going to love those moments, and if Dokkan or Legends, they put in the work, they could, package it, they can make it into a pretty good product. But obviously, at the same time, being hype does not mean the same thing as being a good moneymaker, being a good business move. And from that standpoint, I can kind of understand the perspective that Saiyan Saga isn't that great of a moneymaker focus compared to Namek, compared to Fusions, compared to, Super Saiyans or Ultra Instinct. I can understand that wholeheartedly. So that's just kind of my whole thoughts on it. That being said, though, I still think Saiyan Saga is perfectly fine for part 2 of the 7th anniversary for Dragon Ball Legends, but that's just me right there. Anyways, that's gonna be where we wrap up the vid. Obviously, I did kind of chatter on a bit of too long there, I feel like, but let me know in the comments down below, what do you think about the whole conversation about hype and everything based off what we've seen. Again, if you guys enjoyed the vid, show your support, drop a like down below, subscribe to the channel. Thank you all so much for watching. Take care, stay blessed, and I will see you all in the next one.